Rotation is the most important technical element on the forehand. If you suffer from insufficient rotation or non-existent rotation, your contact point and your swing path are going to be very poor. The rotation on the forehand is a huge power source, but it's not only that. Your contact point also depends on the sequencing of your rotation. And when that contact with the ball is poor on the forehand, this very badly influences the swing path that comes shortly thereafter. I want to remind you that rotation is not an element of the modern forehand, because rotation has always been there on the forehand from day one. If you take a look at these pictures from Suzanne Lenglen from 100 years ago, you can see that she is rotating on her forehand. She starts with her upper body pointing one way and ends with the upper body pointing completely the opposite way. Most importantly, she makes contact in front. The way I judge contact is the position of your dominant shoulder. And ideally, you want to have that dominant shoulder in front of the non-dominant shoulder when you make contact with the ball. So in today's video, I want to show you some forehand rotation traps that a lot of players fall into. And the first trap is the situation where you don't open up early enough. In other words, you are rotating, but you're not sequencing the rotation correctly, and you're therefore making contact with your dominant shoulder behind. This is a common trap, especially at the lower recreational level. So what needs to happen is that the rotation has to be initiated slightly prior to the racket going forward. Now, another very important element of the modern forehand is the loop, and that's going to help with your rotation, because when you loop your racket up and the racket begins to drop, now it's going to be a little bit easier to sequence the rotation properly. So you want to imagine starting to open up towards the bottom portion of the racket drop. And now when you do it this way, you are initiating the rotation slightly prior to the racket going forward, which will guarantee that you make contact with the dominant shoulder in front. Another forehand rotation trap is when you start moving laterally towards your right. If you happen to be right-handed, for lefties, it's going to be moving to the left. So what happens when you are hitting a running forehand, you are moving this way, is that the body weight is naturally going in this direction. And since the rotation goes from right to left, your body is going in the opposite direction. So what happens often, because our momentum is going towards the right, players either don't rotate enough or they don't rotate at all and end up making contact with the dominant shoulder very far back. So here's the most important factor to consider when hitting forehands on the run. You want to hit a dynamic shot, meaning that most ideally you're going to hit the ball off your non-dominant foot and you're going to rotate while one foot is in mid-air. This is going to free your torso up to be able to rotate. If your feet are planted and you have momentum going this way, your torso is going to be locked and it's going to be very difficult to rotate. So a dynamic move is going to make the rotation more intuitive, and most importantly, your upper body is going to be freed up so that you can rotate your dominant side forward. Now, if you have time to get there and set your feet, now the rotation is going to become much more intuitive. And the reason why this will happen more naturally is by you setting your outside foot, you are breaking the momentum that's carrying your body towards the right. Another forehand rotation trap is when you run around your backhand and you don't get to set your feet, it's going to be close to impossible to rotate. And here's the reason why. You are moving backwards, and if you don't set your feet, your momentum is going to carry you towards the left. When the momentum is carrying you to the left as you're initiating and executing the stroke, it's going to be very difficult to get the right side to rotate forward. And what ends up happening is you make contact way behind your body, you hit a weak shot, you have the entire deuce side of the court exposed, and you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So what's crucial when you run around your backhand to hit a forehand is that you set your feet. And now, because you're moving towards the left, this can actually help your rotation. Because remember, the rotation is going from right to left. But if you can execute this movement dynamically where you're setting late in the stroke, somewhere in the racket drop area, now this movement towards the left can make the rotation that's going from right to left more intuitive. And interestingly, a lot of players across all levels have an easier time hitting forehands when they run around their backhand than forehands from the forehand side. Another rotation trap on the forehand is when you allow the ball to get behind your body. It's going to be impossible to rotate when you make contact back here. So you always want to attempt to make contact in front of your body. Now, most commonly, getting the ball behind the body occurs when players are being pushed back in the court. They don't move their feet fast enough, and now the ball gets behind them. And when that's the case, all you can really do is moonball the ball back in play. If you hit hard from back here, there's a good chance that you're gonna spray the ball very wildly. So here's what needs to happen to avoid this rotation trap. First of all, you have to be on fire regarding your footwork and always keep your body behind the ball. When you're being pushed back, you wanna hit off your back foot, and naturally, this is true for all forehands that are hit off the dominant foot. As you go through your stroke, you're gonna slightly lose balance and your non-dominant foot is gonna go up into the air. So when that happens naturally, you do have to intend to rotate and allow that non-dominant foot to swing backwards. So it's gonna look like this. You're moving back, you're hitting off your dominant foot, and you allow the non-dominant foot to swing backwards. And now you are allowing your body to freely rotate, something that you want to do on all forehands. Now, when you're being pushed back, it doesn't matter whether your feet are more closed, as long as you're hitting off that back foot and the non-dominant foot is in the air, you are going to be able to rotate. Ideally, you want the back foot to be a little bit on the outside, which is going to make the rotation more intuitive. And last but not least, another rotation trap on the forehand is the short forehand, for the simple reason that some players are running up straight to the ball without turning at all. Of course, you are going to make contact in front, but you're going to get zero rotation. So what's important on the short forehand is that you turn your body as soon as you recognize that you're going to hit a forehand. This should be an automatic move. When you know the ball is going to your forehand side, you're going to make a turn towards the forehand side. However, when it comes to the short forehand, you don't want to make a full turn because now running forward is going to be very awkward. You want to make a 3/4 turn. So basically your chest pointing slightly into the court. Now you are still turned somewhat, but more importantly, you are going to be able to move to the ball forward and get there quickly enough. Oh man, this was tough. You can practice all these forehands on the ball machine. But the important takeaway is that you do practice these shots, because while you might be okay with your forehand rotation on a stationary ball, once you get into that match, you're going to be moved all over the court. You're going to be moved to the right, to the left, forward, backward. And it's important that you avoid these traps with the methods provided in this video.